This is the story of one family's move across the city of Seattle. Oh, it was one small move for Seattle, but it was a big move for the family involved. The Tierney family. The Tierneys had lived for 20 years or more at 2211 33rd Avenue South. That address is in the Mount Baker area of Seattle. Mount Baker's a lovely little community, nice community center where you can have weddings, nice little park nearby where there's a playground equipment that nobody ever uses. Pretty houses festooned for Christmas. Pretty houses all the time. Lovely community. They even have churches with pancake breakfasts. Now that's Americana for you. You don't find that in many big cities anymore. Maybe in small towns, but not in the big cities, folks. Lovely parkways, walkways, beautiful trees, lake views, gorgeous homes. Really, Mount Baker is a lovely part of Seattle. One of the nice things about Mount Baker is that it's not all that far from Lake Washington, which of course led the family, like many Seattle families, to decide to buy a boat. They docked their boat at a nearby marina, and on a summer's afternoon they'd head down to their boat and climb aboard, and people would be happy, the wife would be smiling, the son would be jolly. They'd look across and they'd see good friends like their friend Roger out on his boat. They'd wave hello and then they'd roar out into the lake. What a grand time they would have. And most of the time their experience was very tranquil out on the lake. But one weekend a year in late July or early August, there was something called Seafair Weekend, where the lake turned into a teeming sea of humanity. A bacchanalia of drunkenness and nakedness. People everywhere, boats everywhere. You didn't even need to be Jesus to walk across the water. Here you just hop across the boats. Well, fortunately, this was only one weekend a year. And most of the time, the lake was very quiet and enjoyable. The whole area was really tranquil, Buddhist, really, in its contemplative potential. The home was lovely. The wife was an excellent gardener, and inside the home was a beautiful living room, a nice, comfy chair, for example. Over in the dining room, often a bottle of wine in the corner waiting to be opened, and a beautiful vase of fresh flowers. The kids enjoyed the house. There was a beautiful gap-toothed daughter and the boy with the big head. Fortunately, the family eventually learned to cover the boy's head with hats, which was a good thing. The boy, unfortunately, had developed a drinking problem. In his early years, he'd drive with beer bottles on the dashboard. Later, he'd stash marijuana in the glove compartment, but that's a different documentary story. The daughter was a winsome, beautiful young thing. The son had suffered from delusions. Various times he thought, for example, that he was a pirate. The daughter grew up to be a joyful young woman who loved life and loved her brother, really, even though he was as big as the Jolly Green Giant, walked around a lot in wife beaters. The wife was tolerant of everybody in the family and loved the home, loved the neighborhood, loved the community, and they loved her. The same was true of the husband, a much-loved public official who loved his home and his family and loved his guitar. He loved singing folk songs, country music, protest music. Made him very happy. Loved to sing that sort of thing. Plucking away. His singing made the daughter happy. Of course, it's hard to tell whether her happiness was the consequence of the wine or the singing. But anyway, there it was. The dog loved the loved the singing too. The dog loved everything, food especially. Good dog, Alice. At this lovely home, family would come to visit. They'd often bring beautiful flowers with them, of course, as a nice gift or offering. But they would come in droves. That was the problem. They'd arrive in fancy cars, and they'd wear fancy shorts, and they'd hang around on the back porch, and they'd take pictures of each other, and they'd take pictures of the house, and then they'd sit and eat food and make faces, and well, it became quite a thing for the family, at least, the husband's family, to gather there. And the wife eventually would get so upset at the crowd of family that she'd stick out her tongue and wish that everybody'd go away. She wanted nothing more than to see everybody's backside disappearing on their way out of town. Well, another part of the story, unfortunately, is that the husband, in a dark chapter of his life, took to a second-floor railing and decided to hurl himself off. Well, I say hurl himself. Nobody's sure whether he did it deliberately or just fell, but he draped a leg over the edge of the railing and, well, let's just say that the story does not have a happy ending. It's a dark, dark chapter in the family's life. We ended up in a wheelchair, and the family decided they had to move. This house was no longer acceptable. It had stairs, and you had to find something else. So the problem is Seattle's a big city. Where do you look? Where are you going to buy a new house? They raced around town, looking everywhere. Tall apartment buildings down near the waterfront. Back and forth they'd go, driving, looking at houses, driving, looking at houses. Then the wife heard about a house that was available over near Seward Park. Now, this is a lovely part of town, immediately adjacent to Lake Washington. Well, that's Seward Park you see there, but the Seward Park residential area is now coming into view, and it's quite lovely. We've got gorgeous homes all along the lake. The house in particular that they were looking at is not far from Martha Washington Park. Now our technicians are allowing us to zero in on the house here, which is on 5600 South Willow. We're getting a good view of the rooftop here. You can't see it from the street. All you can see from the street is the driveway and this funny little building that sort of sticks out in the driveway. We'll return to that in a minute. But the area around the home generally is beautiful. It's got gorgeous lake views and pretty walkways where people stroll all hours of the day, and gorgeous views of the water, and at various times of day, even of Mount Rainier. It's very tranquil. It promises to be a wonderful area for the family to enjoy their years. But as I say, there's a problem. The little, it looks like a garage, but it's not. It's actually a home to a weird neighbor. There's a strange person who lives in that little tiny house adjacent to the Tierneys' new property. She is said to wear a hot pink kimono or housecoat most of the time. She appears out in public in that. People say all she does is eat and drink and make strange noises. She doesn't speak English. Nobody's quite sure what to make of her. Some people are a little bit afraid of her. So, with this one small exception of the eccentric neighbor down the hill from them, the Tierneys are likely to have an enjoyable life in their new home. It's out in a beautiful section of town, tranquil water views, gorgeous views of Mount Rainier, and they're all hoping that this will be a terrific location for their sunset years. We wish them well.